It is certainly no easy task to develop and test new rockets. However, if you want to do so with reusable rockets, then everything gets even complexer. But the complexity is definitely not going to stop Elon Musk, whose aim is to colonize the planet Mars with the help of the newest, most powerful rocket, the Starship. The stage on the bottom part of the rocket is going to be the Super Heavy, which currently to this day hasn't had an orbital flight yet. However, now everything seems to be set for SpaceX to finally roll out the Super Heavy after making some distinct changes on the current version. SpaceX is very motivated to hold on to its lead in the private space industry, and now with the new boosters, the Starship can finally launch to orbit. What new features are the Super Heavy boosters offering, and just how powerful are they now? In this video, we will bring you all the newest updates regarding the upcoming Starship orbital launch. Elon Musk isn't the first person trying to build ginormous rockets, but he is for certain the first person to try to build a completely reusable rocket this size. His current mission is to bring down the cost of spaceflight and space exploration to the minimum. So maybe even one day you watching this video can enjoy a space holiday with SpaceX. The most favorable planet for becoming a multiplanetary species right now is Mars. That's why Musk is targeting Mars to start a new independent colony with voluntary recruiters to enhance the probability of humanity's survival. The first step is going to be the transportation of the space explorers and the tons of supplies they are going to need, alongside the needed equipment. The Starship is going to be perfect for this task, a rocket capable of lifting up to 150 tons of payload to orbit. The Starship is divided in two stages, the lower stage known as the Super Heavy, and the upper stage the Starship itself. The Super Heavy might be not as complex as the Starship, it is still unprecedented. SpaceX has the unusual plan to land the boosters on gigantic mechanical arms attached to a special build tower the size of a small skyscraper. The biggest difference of the Super Heavy compared to other rockets SpaceX has produced before is the enormous size of the Super Heavy. We are looking at a structure measuring almost 70 meters, nearly double the size of the Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy rocket. It can store at least 6 or 7 times the amount or propellant as the Falcon 9 and about 2 to 3 times as much as the Falcon Heavy. However, SpaceX is now testing a new prototype for the Super Heavy booster, B7 or Booster 7. Musk said on Twitter that SpaceX is no longer using the SN20 prototype and B4 booster for the planned orbital flight, but rather the new prototypes. The B7 booster is the first to carry 33 new version 2 Raptor engines. The version before only had 29. The new Raptor V2 version has a simpler design than the original version, making it easier for building and installing, but also operating. The new version is boosting the maximum thrust from 185 tons to 230 tons with the Super Heavy B7 fitted. So with a Super Heavy stacked with all 33 Raptor V2 engines would be capable of operating or producing 40% more thrust compared to the old B4 booster. Of course, the B4 booster never made a single static fire test, but with the move to B7, SpaceX obviously plans to use the new V2 Raptor engines in the new prototype, which won't be too surprising for people following the development. However, the Booster 7 also got a lot new design updates, starting with sleeker raceways. These are the external conduits that protects the wiring. Also, the pressure vessels for the hydraulic power units got some updates, as well as the umbilical panel installed on its aft. Apart from the new Raptor engines, the two most substantial modifications made to Super Heavy Booster 7 are a pair of strake-like aero visors plus the addition of large header tanks meant to store landing propellant. A series of new sharp-edged aero covers are now expected to slot over the top of 2 new pairs of 5 composite overwrapped pressure vessels that run about a third of the way up Booster 7's seconds tanks. It is possible they will function like strakes, fixed wing-like structures designed to improve aerodynamic stability. In comparison, the B4 booster has only 4 sets of those pressure vessels spaced evenly around the outside of its engine section. There also appears to be a new set of internal header tanks in the B7 booster. This means all the propellant used for the landing can now be stored separately. With this modification, the required amount of pressurized gas decreases. This will make it easier to make sure the Super Heavy Raptor engines can be fed with an uninterrupted flow of propellant during the complex maneuvers in the atmosphere and in space. However, SpaceX decided to convert Super Heavy's tank vent into thrusters for maneuvering. That means the new header tanks can have a decreased risk of propellant being accidentally vented during the booster's free fall. Recently, SpaceX used their Mechazilla tower and arms to try to stack a complete Starship together. For this attempt, they also used the new upgraded Booster 7. Compared to the first stacking attempt, the second time SpaceX got the stacking assembly time down to an hour, which is incredibly fast. However, the destacking process took about twice as long. But with the crew collecting more tests and experience, we can expect to see improvements in that aspect too. It still is super impressive, showing just how efficient and fast-moving SpaceX is working and thinking as a company, and this shows us a turnaround trip with a Starship on the same day is not impossible thinking anymore. The current record for 2 consecutive space flights of the same booster is the Falcon 9 booster, which did so in 27 days. NASA's previous record before that was 54 days. What is rather special about the way SpaceX is doing their tests is that they are constantly testing extremely expensive equipment without being for certain if they ever gonna need it. Remember, like we already said, they did already upgrade to the V2 Raptor, which has more thrust, and increase the number of engines on the booster. Overall, SpaceX could in theory produces about 7,600 tons thrust during liftoff. But to prepare for such an enormous launch, SpaceX has so work on the orbital launch site, short OLS. Recently, SpaceX did some more tests on the mechanical strength and simulated expected stress on the Booster 7. The SEAS test will give SpaceX a certain level of confidence heading in further testing and improving their current design. SpaceX now went on to stress test the Booster 7 once again, which may indicate it is ready to start installing the rocket engines. The process started. SpaceX filled the booster to about a third of the way, with roughly 1,000 tons of liquid nitrogen, or a combination of liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen. Once the rocket was fully chilled, there were clear signs of some kind of added stress, as large sheets of ice that had formed on the side of B7 skin broke apart and fell off, going by the physical and visible evidence. It appears the stress was caused by pressurizing Super Heavy's tanks to the point at which they began to deform, though that type of testing is far harder to differentiate. But of course, there have been no official statements yet from SpaceX, so it's impossible to pinpoint what happened. However, SpaceX has been quick to fix any problem during that first test. The Booster 7 is now back at the orbital launch site for further testing. Another interesting problem with the Starship, Musk stumbled upon through a YouTuber's intelligent question, is now going to make a vital change to a new SpaceX rocket. Everyday Astronaut, a YouTuber with around 1.2 million subscribers, was invited to SpaceX's Starbase facility at the end of last year. However, after being invited back earlier this month, Elon Musk revealed that a question the YouTuber had asked actually led to changes being made on one of the newest rockets. One of the improvements to the new ship is to use excess gas from the Starship's main engines for maneuvering thrusters instead of separate cold gas thrusters. This correction was made after Everyday Astronaut's query asked of Musk. In his recent tour of SpaceX's Starbase, Everyday Astronaut, otherwise known as Tim, revealed that Elon Musk admitted that he made the changes in the new rocket after the pair's previous discussion. In the clip, Mr. Musk even calls the said changes one of the biggest improvements we made to Starship. "It occurred to me while I was explaining it to you," Mr. Musk said in the YouTube video, adding, "I was like, wait, what are we doing?" It is to mention that in the original meeting between the pair, which took place in August 2021, Mr. Musk was discussing the nature of the new Starship SpaceX rocket. He stated that the Starship comprises the actual ship as well as the attached thrusters, because of which you don't even need a cold gas thruster system. You already have hot gas. Tim then interjected the SpaceX CEO by saying, "But this is only for the booster, right?" At this moment, Mr. Musk appeared to come to some sort of realization, as the video showed him, and thought. He said, although arguably, now you mentioned it, it might be wise to do this for the spaceship too. What he realized was that the ship, as well as the thrusters, also don't need a cold gas thruster system.
But this is only for the booster, right?
Yes. Although arguably, now you mention it, we might be wise to do this for the ship too.
Back then, he reassured Everyday Astronaut that SpaceX would fix it. Recently, on September 8, SpaceX performed a new static fire test at the Starbase on Starship 24 with all of its 6 engines installed. According to SpaceX, the test was completed successfully. The Ship 24 is currently the version intended to be used for the first orbital flight. The Vice President of Commercial Sales at SpaceX, Tom Ochenaro, said that the first orbital flight of the company's reusable launch vehicle Starship will be happening within the next year. Sometime in the next year or so we should be orbital with Starship, he said. That aligns with a tweet from Elon Musk, SpaceX chief executive, where he predicted the first successful orbital Starship mission in the next 1 to 12 months. In another tweet, Musk called Starship to orbit one of his 2 main goals for this year, so we can be confident he is trying his best to meet this goal for this year. It all now comes down to the FAA and SpaceX's testing protocol, which will determine the much-anticipated Starship and Super Heavy orbital launch. Let's hear what you think of the SpaceX Starship updates and the upcoming orbital launch in the comments section below.